I will blow your mind with this video because I'm going to be talking about a concept that I found out about this all by myself with no one telling me, because I watched so many videos on confidence and none of them kind of like solved my issue with my own confidence. This was just like me journaling, and like one day a few months ago I realized what the issue was with my confidence, self-esteem, self-worth, whatever you want to call it, because I made like all these lists about like all the things that I like about myself. I spend time with my hobbies, and I'm not saying that those things aren't important because they are part of this too. But it made me realize like what was at the core of all of this to actually feel confident, feel worthy, have the self-esteem to be able to go after what you want, yada yada. And it's safety. So that was the video. No, that was not the video. I need to explain myself a little bit more. You're probably thinking like, what the fuck is she talking about? If you don't feel safe in who you are, you cannot express who you are. And if you cannot express who you are, you can also not feel safe in who you are. Let me explain that. So right now, you probably are a version of you that's kind of like smaller than what you should be, okay? When you were younger, you were a child. You didn't care about what people thought. You didn't care about anything. You just did whatever the frick you wanted to do. You maybe drew anime or like played with video games or whatever it is that you really liked. And then the world started to kind of like put all this pressure of like, you shouldn't be this, you shouldn't be that, this is not good for you, you're a girl, you shouldn't be doing this, you're a boy, you shouldn't be doing that, and like kind of like make you smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then suddenly you have this little ball which is you, and they've made you so small that you don't know who you are, you don't feel worthy, and you don't feel safe, and you don't feel like you're expressing yourself. You just feel like in this weird place of like, I'm lost, I don't know who I am, I feel like I am worth nothing, I feel like everything I do is wrong, or like I shouldn't be this way because guys shouldn't do these things or girls shouldn't do these things, or like society says that I have to have a partner or I have to have kids or whatever. Like just think about all of the things that the capitalist society tells us to do and yada yada. We've become this little bowl that's like tiny, tiny, tiny here. You don't feel safe here. You know why? Because your potential or who you are is actually this. It's this big, and you're just taking up this little space. When you're just taking up like a 1% of like your 100%, you don't feel safe because you don't feel like you can trust yourself, you don't feel like you can be confident. Why? Because you're not taking up the space that you should be taking up. But the thing is, until you are not taking up all the space that you're meant to be taking up, you're not gonna feel safe in yourself, because you're not gonna feel like you're being true to yourself. So let's say, for example, you love anime. Come up with one of my own examples. And for a long time, I felt like anime was like this thing that girls should not be into, because I was into anime like at a really young age, and I loved it. And I was always very unapologetic about liking it, because I didn't see what the problem was with a girl liking anime, because for me it was like normal, and everyone was like, oh no, anime is for nerds, it's for freaks, yada yada. And that kind of started to make me self-conscious, and the moment it started to make me self-conscious, I started kind of like retreating and not sharing as much, and just like allowing it to not be an interest of mine anymore. And then after some time, like I met my boyfriend in college who was really into anime, and he started suggesting anime, so I started watching anime again. And I just reconnected with that part that felt like me. And I know it sounds like the stupidest thing, the fact that you reconnect with something like as basic as anime, but it just made me realize like this is something that I actually enjoy doing. And like I enjoy finding a new anime show and maybe spending like 12 hours watching it until I finish it, because it's so addictive. And that's something that makes me me. And I need to accept that. And I don't need to look up to someone who maybe like spends 10 hours a day working out or something and be like, oh, why can I not be like this person? Because just this is another thing. Like comparison is just like, no, we're not gonna take other people into the equation here. This is important. The only thing important here is what you like to do. So try to make a list, if that's helpful for you, of like all the things that you enjoy doing that maybe society deems as like wrong, or maybe your parents deem as wrong, or your friends think are weird or something like that. It's like spirituality. Like I remember when I started out like seeing yoga, spirituality and all of those things, and I started consuming this content, I felt guilty, because I had this idea that everyone around me would just like stop talking to me and say that I was a weirdo for believing in energies, whatever, because they're like not scientifically proven, yada yada. So it's like I didn't allow myself to kind of like step into my truth, because I felt like, oh, people are gonna judge me, people are gonna do this and that. But I do have to say something. The moment I did allow myself to kind of like grow into these things and started like actually consuming this kind of stuff, actually talking publicly that I believed in astrology or stupid things like that, I stopped caring about what people thought. You know why? Because I was taking up, like if that was like my thing, maybe I was here, I started taking up like maybe this type of space. And the moment I took up my space, me, who I am as a human being, I instantly felt so confident that I did not care if people judge me. I did not care what they thought about me, because I was like, I'm just gonna find friends who are into the same topics as me if I talk about it. Because if like, you have to imagine it as like, if you're in a party and you are like surrounded by people and you hear a conversation about like people talking about anime, for example, you will join them because you're like, oh, these are my people. And you can go there and you know that you're gonna feel at home, you're gonna feel safe with these people because they are expressing something that is something from your core. You know what I'm saying? So if you're not like talking about something, like if you go to a party and like you are not hearing anyone talk about something that you like, but you say like, oh, have you watched this new anime show? You know that a lot of people around you can hear you, and the right people will come to you because they're like, oh my god, someone's talking about anime, that's exciting. Because I'm the kind of girl at a party who will usually like start talking about anime because like I don't fucking care anymore. And I usually end up attracting all the anime freaks to me. Because they're like, oh my god, I'm so happy that you just mentioned that, because like I did not know if like this was like a normal thing, whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of like you going into your own things that make you you. And you can start like, if you want right now, just make a list of like all the things that make you you. And maybe it's just like 2 things. Maybe it's 3 things, maybe it's nothing, maybe right now you're like, who the fuck am I? And I have no freaking idea. But you don't really need to like know everything. You don't need to have like many things on the list. It can be like small things, like having coffee every morning. Like for example, for me, having coffee every morning is a personality trait. And I know people are like, you cannot make coffee your personality. And it's like, yes, I can. Yes, I actually can if I decide to. Like specialty coffee for me is like one of those things that's just like a passion of mine. I was on a trip in Berlin last week, and the thing that I did or spent most hours doing was like spending my free time in like specialty coffee places to just like have one flat white after another, because I like going to coffee shops and just see them, because specialty coffee shops specifically are like very pretty and very aesthetic with like plants and all of these things. And it's like when I spend time doing those things that I like, even though there might be people, and there will be people who are gonna judge me and be like, why are you spending time doing this instead of like, I don't know, maybe visiting like memorials and like museums and this and that. Is like, but I don't like any of those things. Like those are things that people are making normal to like, and I'm not that kind of person. Like when I travel, I don't go to museums. I hate it. I get bored. I'm just gonna be the person who like spends all day in coffee shops or walking around the city pretending that I'm a local, because that's what I like to do, or eating, because I love eating different food when I'm traveling. But I feel like all of these are things that if you make the list and you are still not sure about like certain aspects of your personality, start by trying things out. Start by doing all of these things that you think might be part of your personality but you're not sure. Because the moment you try them, you're gonna realize like, oh, I actually don't like this. It's like the time when, for example, when I was younger, I was like, oh, I want to become a dancer or this or that. So I saw people like dancing and having so much fun with it, and when I tried it, I was like, I actually don't like this. Like I like the idea of liking this, but I don't like actually doing it. And I've tried like a lot of different sports, and at the end I just found like the kind of workouts, for example, that worked for me, or I tried yoga and fell in love with that. It's not just the fact that you're trying things, it's also the fact that you're spending time on like trying to get to know yourself. And I feel like that's one of the most like self-loving things that you can do with you, which is why a lot of people are probably out there telling you like, go on a date with yourself at least once a week, even if you're in a relationship, which is something that I like, best advice ever. Because I feel like knowing yourself means expressing yourself, means validating yourself, means expanding yourself and allowing yourself to take up all the space that you're meant to take up. And something that comes into this whole thing too is like friendships or people you surround yourself with. You will have people around you who might be like your bestest friends, or parents who love you, or boyfriends or girlfriends who love you, and they will try to make you small. You know why? Because a lot of people, if they are not taking up all their space, they try that everyone else around them also stay small. So like if your father and mother are staying small, they don't want you to become this big thing. They don't want you to grow into who you're meant to be. So like people around you who are not confident, who are not loving themselves, they're gonna try to make everyone like same level as them, so that they don't have to like question why they're not doing those things. So keep that in mind, that you will have to face like a lot of resistance from people around you if you're not around like very healthy people, which I don't know if it's the case for anyone, but it's not my case, and it's not the case for anyone I know. Well, some of them. I mean, my boyfriend has a pretty healthy family. Like his parents are usually like, his parents, for example, are the complete opposite of my parents, like where they accept him and like they tell him to like go do the things that he wants to do and like never conform to anything. My parents are the complete opposite. So just keep that in mind, that you are going to be facing resistance, but the fact that you're facing resistance doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that people who are insecure are going to try to make you feel insecure because they want you at your level. So you need to kind of like, if you want to spend time by yourself, I think that this is one of the best things that you can do. Like, if there's friends that don't promote like you evolving or expanding, just ignore them. If your parents do the same thing, just try to spend as little time with them as possible. And if you find one friend, just one friend that makes you feel safe in their presence, that makes you feel like you can be yourself around them, spend as much time as you can with that person, because that means that that is time where you're going to be exploring yourself. That's going to be time where you're going to be expanding yourself. That's going to be time where even if you don't do anything different from what you usually do, you're gonna feel safe and you're gonna feel that feeling of safety. And the more, it's kind of hard for me to explain this, but it's like the more you express yourself, the more you grow into this version of you, and the more you are grown into this version of you, the more safe you feel to like just be yourself. It's kind of the analogy of like the snake biting its own tail, you know? So it's like you need to do one thing to get to the other, to get to the thing, to get to the other, but they both go hand in hand, you know? The moment you take action towards things that align with who you are, that's when you will start feeling confident, and those are the things that are gonna make you feel confident. At the end of the day, it's actions. For example, I really wanted to start a YouTube channel, but I was afraid that some people from my high school would find it or something like that. But I was always like, no, but I'm afraid, I cannot do this, blah, blah, blah. But the moment I remember I posted my first YouTube video, which was like a shitty YouTube video, like it was nothing special. I remember like the moment I posted it, I just had done something for myself. I had just allowed myself to expand myself a little bit. And that made me feel so safe that I was like, I don't fucking care if anyone from my high school sees this, because this just made me feel safer in myself. This just made me feel like I can trust myself. This just made me feel that this person inside of here is rooting for me. Because at the end of the day, it's like you have to root for yourself. No one else has to do that. And something that I also want to mention, if you don't know where to like start this journey, or you don't know where to start like knowing yourself, fear. Fear is your answer. Fear is the way that I started to know myself fully and deeply. That fear and excitement are the two sides of the same coin. So fear and excitement are exactly the same thing. So whenever something makes you afraid, go in that direction. For example, if you're like, oh, I really like traveling, but solo travel, nah, never for me. That used to be me. And I'm an Aries, and I'm the kind of person who's like, if I'm afraid of something, I will try to like overcome that fear, because I don't like a fear having power over me. So I didn't do it out of like trying to get to know myself better or anything. I just did it out of spite towards myself, if that makes sense. That every time I did something that made me afraid, that made me become more confident in myself, because it made me feel safer inside of me, because I took the leap for myself and I managed to like grow from that experience. So if there's something that you want to do and you're not doing it out of fear, know that the moment you do that, you're gonna learn so many things about yourself on the other side. And you don't need to like do something super crazy or so it's like, if you're afraid of traveling solo, maybe just like go to like the country that's close to you, or like another city in your country that you've never been to. Something that feels scary but not super scary, and you can just like build from there. And the other thing when it comes to fear that I also wanted to mention, that is really tied with the whole like confidence thing, is like try to think of all the times that you've wanted to do something. And the other thing that is related to fear, when it comes to like more like the day-to-day and like personal relationships, is like, how many times a day do you say yes when you want to say no out of fear? Or do you say no when you want to say yes out of fear? And this is not something you just need to change right away, but like something that I want you to practice for like the next week if you want. Every time that you're going to say no to something, like no to going to a party, no to a plan, no to a date, no to something, is it because of fear? Just make yourself that question. And if it's because of fear, if at any point you can change that decision to a yes, or if you say yes and it's out of fear, change it to a no. For example, if your best friend is like, oh please, can you help me move this week because I really need your car, and you're the only friend that they have that has a car. And let's say that week you just really don't want to do it. You just don't. You just want to lay in bed all weekend and you just don't want to see anyone. You can say no to that person. You don't owe that person any. And I know that you want to be a good friend and help them or whatever, but you have to remember that you're the only one who's going to put yourself first. And a person is not going to stop being your friend if you do something like that. So if you have this fear of like, oh, if I say no to something this small, they're going to stop being my friend, then maybe it's their loss, not yours. So Remember that, because people pleasing is the way to like not be confident. If you're constantly people pleasing, you're not a confident person, because you're constantly putting others people's needs in front of yours, and that's not what a confident person does. That's a person who makes herself or himself small, or themselves small. So don't do that. Like, if you want to become a confident person, like, people pleasing is the first thing that needs to go. And I'm not saying that you need to start being a selfish bitch from like today, but you need to start putting yourself first and start saying no to things, and start like saying like, okay, what do I want to do in this moment, and kind of like separate yourself from like what other people want from you. But let me know if like this was helpful and you enjoyed it, and give me a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe, leave me a comment for a suggestion for other videos, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you guys next week.